Sunderland sit in the Premier League. Yes, a newly promoted Sunderland are sitting fourth, at 1 point behind Chelsea. This is scenes, and just imagine if this was any other club, we would be glazing them to hell, man. But no, this team of unknown gems are making their own path in the Premier League and have been dominating week in and week out, even through wins, losses and draws. This is a side that last year were playing championship football and have taken points off the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Aston Villa. They've only lost twice this season and conceded less than a goal a game, whilst also scoring in every home match so far. And then in the grander scheme of things, people are talking about Arsenal conceding no goals, Manchester United, Tottenham. Let's really talk about the guys at the top of the table. The top four involve Sunderland right now. This is the same club that I started a FIFA career mode, a couple seasons back after watching Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix or something. In this documentary that they showed that the club was drowning, they have come out on top, fielding the likes of Granit Xhaka, Wilson Isidore, Robbie. They've even got Mukiele, who used to play for, I think, RB Leipzig. And now all these new signings are cooking in the Premier League. And they started off this season with a bang, winning 3-0 at home to West Ham. This is not some other, newly promoted side. This is West Ham, an established Premier League side. They dusted them off with ease, with goals from Mayenda, Ballard and then Isidore right at the depths of the game. But then in game week 2 they get humbled, losing 2-0 to Burnley, and everyone thinks, they were not really made for this. It's Sunderland. The first game week they were just on a high, and now they're coming back to normal. But no, this was not normal, because game week 3 would be pure drama. This is where Sunderland would come up against Brentford and show that they were not in it just for the one game. They're in it for the entire season. Whilst going 1-0 down in the 77th minute of the game, these Sunderland players somehow grind out a result. With a penalty in the 82nd minute, then an Isidore winner in the 96th minute of the game. Final kick puts it into the back of the net. Well, he doesn't really kick it. I think it was a header. I just said that for emotion. Then they draw away from home to Crystal Palace, who, no one really saw Sunderland beating anyway. They grind out a draw, get the point, and go into another game week. Another game week where they would replicate the exact same strategies with a 1-1 draw against Aston Villa this time. And it's crazy because if you watch the game, Sunderland went down to 10 men in the first half. Ronaldo, not Ronaldo, getting a red in the game, and then they would just hold on. They would have 29% possession throughout the entirety of the game and still would make their mark. And despite Aston Villa scoring in the 67th minute via Cash, it would again be Isidore. With one of the few chances that they would have on goal in the game, Wilson Isidore would tie it up. That's another big point for these Sunderland players, and they go into their next game with that momentum. And this momentum would carry through as they would win 1-0 against Nottingham Forest. But then game week 7 would come around and they would lose 2-0 to Manchester United. But it was like this side and these players knew that they were Premier League proven by now. Because week in and week out, we were not really going into a game and saying Sunderland were going to lose. In game week 8, they would take on Wolves, who have obviously been struggling, and they would put them to bed with ease. And that was all with Wolves having about 18 shots in the game, but Sunderland's defence was just impenetrable. Back at the Stadium of Light, Sunderland's home ground, anything is possible. These fans are roaring with every touch of the ball, and Sunderland make it happen. With Mukiele getting a goal in the 16th minute of the game, and then Talbi forcing an own goal late on, I think it was in the 90th minute. Sunderland would win 2-0 against Wolves and then go into an even bigger game against Chelsea. And it looked like Chelsea were going to run away with it early on in this game because Garnacho would score in the first 5 minutes. But again, it was that man Isidore. Yeah, Isidore. And he would score in the 22nd minute after a bit of long throw chaos. And then in the 93rd minute, it's Brian Robbie who's bullying defenders in the box, and the ball would fall to Talbi, it in to the back of the net, making it 2-1. And Sunderland have just got 3 points against Chelsea. They would go to Stamford Bridge and only get 32% possession, but come out with the points. These points that would put them second in the table after this said game. And then in game week 10, they faced Everton and drew 1-1. With Sunderland surprisingly dominating this game, getting 61% possession, with the brilliance of Everton's players being suppressed, like Njai and Grealish are silenced. And then it's Granit Xhaka who ties up the game in the 60-something minutes. And it just got even crazier because after that game, They would draw 2-2 to Arsenal, the front runners for the Premier League this season, in a game that saw absolute madness with Brian Brobby, tying up the game deep into extra stoppage time. And how many times has it happened for Sunderland? Sunderland and their manager GgNoRaGe has been just taking over this entire league. But I actually don't know. I can't predict every single result that Sunderland have been having. But somehow this team that he's forged together from a bunch of just different signings are coming together beautifully and challenging week in and week out, whether you like it or not. And 11 games in, Sunderland have done things that a newly promoted side would only hope to do for an entire season. But we're 11 games in. Yes, there is a future that Sunderland lose every single game for the rest of the season and just completely flop. But in reality, we know that that's really not going to be the case. Because they've not just been surviving, they've been commanding games from home. Commanding games from start to finish at the Stadium of Light, then going away from home, digging deep, getting their backline in shape, and trying to, iron out a result. They've taken points off the Big Six, the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea, and are proving themselves to be a side to be reckoned with. And their identity actually seems to be clear by now. It's structure first, with every player knowing their roles, and then transitions, whilst also utilizing long throws, set pieces, and direct play to, get the advantage too. Because this is a physical side as well. And despite underlying numbers suggesting that they are going to regress slightly, especially with the late goals that they do score in the games, still, they are not regressing to the point where they're going to get relegated, are they? And I think now more than ever, people need to start taking Sunderland serious. And it's weird to even say that. So let's see where Sunderland finished this season. Can they pull off a Wolves from a couple seasons back when they finished 7th and got Europa League football? Or are they going to dwindle out and finish like 13? We'll find out. What do you think, Bruquinho? Clearly, someone is not in the mood to talk about Sunderland. He's only want to talk about Ronaldo. So, yeah, peace. Alright, I'm going to be honest. Erling Haaland is starting to scare me. And he should be scaring a lot of you guys too. We really need to start having serious conversations about the form that this striker is on. I mean, this guy is starting to become a threat to all your favourite records. He's about to beat Alan Shearer for getting 100 goals in the least amount of games in the Premier League, and many other records are going to be broken by this guy. Honestly, at this point, it feels like Haaland's playing player career mode on FIFA, and he's put the level all the way down to beginner. And also, the person that he's playing against is his little cousin, who's 6 years old and can't speak English. And I'm saying this because currently, in all competitions, Haaland has 32 goals. At this point, it's not a hot streak. This is a glitch in the matrix. This guy is doing side quests, opening up YouTube channels, doing daily vlogs. He's taken over your favourite strikers' numbers, and also, he's trying to rival Mr. Beast's numbers. He's coming for everyone's job. 32 goals in 20 games is pretty much 1.5 goals every single time he steps onto the pitch for the mathematicians out there. You get me? That's 14 goals in 11 appearances in the Premier League, 5 goals in 4 games in the Champions League, and 13 goals in 5 games for Norway in these little international fixtures that we've been having for the World Cup. All of that in the 2025/26 season alone. And according to those Opta guys that like to, put the greatest statistics out on the internet of all time, at this goal scoring rate and pace, he's on track to get about 95 goals if he plays 60 games this season. Will he do it? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. That is nearly a 100-goal season, rivaling the likes of Alien, Smurf, Messi. And this is Haaland that we're talking about, a guy that people were saying a couple seasons back that is washed up, dry. He looks like a League 2 player. He has completely transformed his game and has honed in on this idea of being the all-round striker in football, making arguments about him being compared to the likes of Alexander Isak being turned to dust. And those were arguments that I was even feeding into this time last season, making statements like Isak was the best striker in football. And honestly, it looked like that for a while until this season. But where strikers have come and gone, Haaland has stayed through this period in time. From the time that he's walked into a Manchester City side, he has been prevalent and relevant. Relevant in a sense that he's there, an important factor in every single big game that Manchester City have had. and even in his off-season, he still bagged over 25 goals. Let's also just dive into the fact that he's got 14 goals in the first 11 league games this season. And that means if he plays every Premier League game at this pace, he's going to finish on around 48 goals. And even if he plays his usual 33 games, he would still finish with 42 goals at this rate. Meaning that, yes, he would beat his own record of 36 in the 2022/23 season. And he's doing this while averaging about 22 to 24 touches per game. These stats are generation, like, you can't really compare them to many strikers in the last 5 to 7 years. I was seeing an argument online saying that Drogba had the best peak of a striker for his 2009 season with Chelsea, where he scored, no penalty goals and got a bunch of goals without obviously scoring penalties. But it just makes no sense to me, because penalty goal or no penalty goal, goals are goals. Haaland, he's done that many seasons. How many generational seasons has this guy had? Every season that he's participated in has been a generational, one that has been record breaking. And even this whole debate of non-penalty goals via penalty goals, why are we asking that penalties to score since you never take them? Even in a competitive match for your school, it's hard to score. It's not easy. Sometimes debates like that are stupid. They include this non-penalty goal stat. Like, did you ever play football in your life? I don't understand. And let's just quickly zoom in on a few of Haaland's best games this season. First of all, the game against Manchester United, where it was a complete training session for Manchester City, whilst also kind of being a therapy session for Manchester United centre-backs. First off in the game, he gets slipped through by Jeremy Doku and just easily chips the ball over the keeper. Then later on in the game, it's like he gets put through on goal via, him being the last man in Manchester United defence and just pulled back in. And in this situation, let's just pause it as the ball gets given to Haaland in this moment. Do you have any doubt in your mind that Haaland is not going to finish this opportunity? Look how far he gets the ball out. He has the entire half of the pitch to go through before having to go in a 1v1 scenario before scoring. And at that moment, as soon as he got the ball right there, on that halfway line, and he takes one touch, everyone just knew. Grab the game. Haaland had already scored again. And that's exactly what happens. We watch it through. Haaland, one-on-one with the goalkeeper, and just finishes off with ease. Honestly, at this point, some of these things that he does in his game just never do. It's like his game against Bournemouth as well, just with 2 chances and both close. But again, the first goal in the Bournemouth game being another bit of a transitional play with Manchester City breaking the ball online via, a header Ryan Turkey or fun. Anyway, Haaland just forcing his foot into a 1v1 scenario where he's again at the halfway line, and at this point in the game, in this position, do we have doubt that Haaland is going to not score? No, instantly you think goal, but it's simple. He's becoming that dangerous, that much of a robot, or that's exactly what happens. He utilizes his head to control the ball down to his foot before carrying the ball forward in a strides like galloping into the sunset like Haaland. Eventually shoots the ball and goes into the back of the net and 1-0. Then again, after Bournemouth strike back to make it 1-1, it's Haaland put through against another defensive line that is way too high. Against guys like Haaland and Mbappe, not playing high lines. Haaland is a material player that is, even a high line playing, it's going to sit today. But in this occasion again, he's done it again. Taking the ball round the goalkeeper and just slotting it away. Then even in Europe, I've talked about some of his finishes. He had a brilliant one against Napoli, where Phil Foden did a brilliant thing over a Napoli defender before Haaland did an acrobatic finish. That was not easy at all. I know 19 strikers in the 70s that he messed this up, but Haaland knew exactly what movement to do after the ball in the back of the net. Then on a national stage, he's dominating with even more power. He's starting to put his nation on his back alongside the likes of Erdegaard full forward. Sitting on 13 goals in 5 matches, he has been around with a 16-goal haul in the World Cup qualifying rounds. Then against Israel, he scores a hat-trick despite missing penalties. And that goes back onto my point, non-penalty goals. Penalty goals, who the hell cares? Imagine if he scored the penalties. He got like 5 goals in this game too. And then if you want to say stat padding against Italy, he scores twice. This is not a side with arms in their side, it's just a side that's a bit dysfunctional with world-class players in this position. right now he's playing at an all-time rate, scoring about 333 goals in 375 games in competitions. At the same age, Messi had about 299 and Ronaldo had about 175. And I know this is not correlating to the way they play, the style of play, the eye test, etc. But we need to start respecting Haaland and also being scared of his abilities every time he comes up against a big team. Even the likes of impenetrable Arsenal this season have suffered against Haaland. It feels a bit different this year because Manchester City are playing more direct into him. They are now utilising him directly. With the number of transitions, fast breaks, counter-attacks, and just more direct balls into Haaland doubling. With Haaland's shot quality going up and his quantity. So yeah, Haaland is beginning to scare me, and guys should be scared too, but also defenders in Europe should be too. It's going to be a mad season, and I hope that he can continue this trajectory of brilliance. You guys let me know what you think of Haaland this season, and of course, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and you know what, guys? I actually think that Esteban might be that guy. Like, after watching this international break and some of his performances, and then also looking back at some of the games that he's had since the start of the season for Chelsea, Esteban is becoming one of my favourite wingers in football. And it's weird because ever since Chelsea dropped 50-odd million for a 70,
beat Udinese and now needed Palermo to drop points in order to escape relegation. Palermo, however, were playing Hellas Verona at home, a team that was dead last at the time. The boys in pink took the lead at the half-hour mark, but by some absolute miracle, Hellas Verona equalized early into the second half. Unfortunately, that was just the sports gods playing with my hopes and dreams, and Palermo retook the lead not even 2 minutes later. Now, pause real quick. That right there is Enzo Maresca. This was the only goal he scored for Palermo, the only one which contributed to Carpi FC's downfall. The only fucking one. Enzo played one more season before hanging up his boots and trying his luck with coaching. After a stint at a Serie B club, Maresca impressed enough to be hired by Man City and eventually became one of Pep Guardiola's assistants. Then in 2023, Maresca decided to go on his own pathway by becoming manager for championship side Leicester City. In one single season, he helped the team easily return back to the Premier League, and that caught the eye of Chelsea Football Club. The Italian was signed by the Blues in July 2024, and immediately he impressed. Chelsea in their first 17 league transfers actually delegated to the board of directors, while player selection can also be dictated by medical staff. Which, to be fair, is honestly not a bad idea for Chelsea, considering how volatile their coaching has been the last 20 years. However, the main obstacle with such a foreign structure is that most managers are pretty eagerly cycling, which, to be fair, is kind of required for stuff. But dog, this one's greatest ever coach. If one thing goes wrong, I mean just one thing. This brother is either hurting himself or letting the poison. A lot of these guys are mature, so it's important actually to not slow targets. It really seems like the club just looked at how Maresca was a new, inexperienced coach and just kind of jumped to the thought that he would be. And that wasn't all. Maresca basically had to be about that, and also said that they were way longer than what was being watched by the editor. Then there were rumors in mid-December about the Italian city. So for many within the club and the fan base itself, it never really felt like Maresca was a true Chelsea fan. On the other hand, though, Maresca felt like he wasn't supposed to. What Chelsea's best friend would be like, fuck that, here's all of my products. Which brings me to my next point. If you are wondering why Chelsea is not being serial winner wrong with Jera, it's because the transfer policy under the new ownership doesn't have any actual ambition. We've now seen it twice. This club has fallen out of the title race midway through the season. And instead of trying to build a stronger core with some proven players to take them up a notch, Chelsea keep preying strictly on every talent aged 18 to 22 like an unmarried San Francisco tech bro. Rule of thumb, by the way. If you are buying predominantly younger, inexperienced players, you want them to have something like Garden, White, or Superstar. Because that way, the young players can have some physically. And this is especially the case if the manager himself is also inexperienced. But because of these sporting records and such, Chelsea's most experienced player is Reece James, who is 26. In fact, throughout this entire squad, there is not one single player who is 9. wonder why this team just keeps collapsing midway through the season. I couldn't possibly pinpoint this problem. This month's transfer policy is like a beaver career mode player going on so FIFA, looking at a list of all the players that are 70, 77 overall with 80 potential, and then just buying them. Which is not that because this is the method for when you're playing as a team that has, like a limited budget. This is one of the richest clubs in the world we're talking about. Sure, the club has managed to strike gold with Cole Palmer, Moises Caicedo, and probably this time. But considering just how many talents have been bought and sold in one season later, that is a success rate that probably rivals Chelsea. How do we hope that Chelsea have reached lost to imagine a season or similar? Outside of this, it's also a relatively interesting coach. By the way, there's also the foundation of nepotism because the new 2018 coaches are still very that became long-standing deals. As you look at these coaches' CVs on transfer market, something just doesn't really add up. Now, this is not to say that Chelsea's situation is in crisis or that it's absolutely just the news you see it's just going to be this never-ending purgatory.
Well, he's my big sense though. Nah, that broke him out. Look at that, bro. That'd be like a yellow or red. Oh, he didn't get hurt, so. Bro. Wow. Bro.
By the title to see what now plus the Spanish football channel on my cable have released players of the 21st century. So I thought it'd be a fun idea today to go through, rank, and talk about some things. And let me know in the comments down below. It's ranking one. All of these rankings, Sky, they always have good rankings. And this one is interesting because it's the 21st century, so you don't have players like Pele, you don't have Maradona in here. It's just players from 2026. So I haven't really looked at much. Saw the first three. Let's zoom in for you guys. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. Although now, of course, it's 11. And we'll try our best here to see players in the next round. We'll try our best. So here we go. Hope we get our face cam up here. It works a little bit better. So Lionel Messi as number 1. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I love Ronaldo. Ronaldo is number 2. Now, these two, there's going to be people in the comments that are probably going to try to give some, unpopular takes. Both of them should be in the top 2. They're exactly where they should be. Okay?
Zidane at 3. Now, we have a real love for Zidane. Right? It's the best.
Scared the fuck out of me.
It's weird because ever since Chelsea dropped 50-odd million for a 17-year-old, I was thinking this guy can't really be that good, can he? Like at one point they were calling him Messinho. Messinho. Not Ronaldinho. This is Messinho. Who even made that up? Like at this point I was hearing Messinho, I'm thinking this is just another guy that people had just seen on Twitter or YouTube compilations. But now it's November 2025 and Esteval is cooking for not only Chelsea but also the Brazilian national team. In a team filled with flary-type wingers, the likes of Vini Jr., Rodrigo, Rafinha, Anthony, Martinelli, a bunch of others, Esteval has broken into a team and is holding a spot on the wing. And suddenly the nickname of Messinho is not looking too out of the ordinary. And let's just dive into his reputation before donning the blue of Chelsea. He would come through Cruzeiro's academy, an academy that hosted the likes of R9 Ronaldo back in the day, before making a move to Palmeiras at 14 years of age. And then by that age, he's tearing it up at every level, winning 2 Paulista youth titles, Copa do Brasil under 17, a hat-trick in a national final, all before people have even gotten GCSEs. And then in 2024, he properly hits his grown man stage, and yet he's not really a grown man yet, playing 31 league games for Palmeiras and scoring 13 goals. That's also 45 games in all competitions and 15 goals as a 17-year-old. And of course, it's not like we had never seen this before. The likes of Neymar Jr. went on a similar path with Santos. A similar path to the point where he was already getting put up in Ballon d'Or shouts while playing in the Brazilian league. But by the end of that season with Palmeiras, he would become the first ever player to record over 20 goal contributions that was under the age of 18 in a single league campaign, getting 12 goals and 8 assists in the Brazilian league. And it's not like he was stat padding either. He was scoring big goals in the games that he had. So when Chelsea in 2024 rock up and say to Palmeiras, yeah, we'll pay this amount up front and then that fee will rise and we'll just take him in our team, yeah? This wasn't them just buying Esteval on vibes. They saw the potential. And eventually they would end up waiting an entire year for him to be included in their team. Now, even though Chelsea had announced the deal in 2024, Esteval was still playing for Palmeiras even during the Club World Cup, where he would actually come up against Chelsea. And in a quarter-final display against Chelsea, he would act like he did not know the script, going at the likes of Levi Colwill, dancing against these Chelsea players, in a game that he would actually get a player of the match in and also score a goal. And then that got football fans and also Chelsea fans thinking, this is the guy that we bought. This is not a YouTube compilation. We just saw it in person. It's crazy. Esteval is real deal. And then fast forward to after the Club World Cup, it's August 2025, and he finally steps foot into Chelsea's training ground, walking into a new project that is being led by Enzo Maresca. In a debut against Crystal Palace, he comes off the bench, shows a few flashes, but doesn't really do anything that is going to make the crowd jump up and scream his name. But then the second game was a very different story, and honestly, he dictated a lot of the pace of it. In a 5-1 thrashing away from home to West Ham, Esteval was there. Despite giving away the ball for West Ham's first goal in the game, which would be, I think, a banger from Paqueta, Esteval would continue, keep his chin up, and play well, spending the rest of the game ripping up defenders on the right touchline. And just before half-time, he skins a man on the halfway line, drives in, cuts it back to Enzo Fernandez, who puts it into the goal, becoming the youngest player to register a Premier League assist for Chelsea. He would end the night as Sky Sports Player of the Match, and honestly, during the entire 90 minutes, there were whole compilations of every single touch that Esteval had in this game. He was immaculate. And then you get a performance that he had against the likes of Liverpool at Stamford Bridge. With Chelsea drawing 1-1 with Liverpool, by the 95th minute, it's Esteval at the back post that wins the game. With Cucurella whipping in across late on in this game, Esteval creeps up at the back post and sticks it into the net. It's his first goal for Chelsea and it's in the 96th minute of the game, beating the reigning Premier League champions to hand them their third loss of the season at this point. Then you've got another performance that Esteval was involved in the cup against Wolves, where Chelsea would win 4-3, but it was Esteval's little cheeky dink in the game that just again summarized what type of player this guy is. And even in the Champions League, he's making his name known, becoming the youngest ever player for Chelsea to score in the Champions League. At this point in the season, he's up there like the 80th percentile for successful dribbles and takeaways. Meaning pretty much that he is one of the best progressive carriers of the ball in football. Like at this point, he's not just influencing games, he's actually getting the numbers too to back it up. Also, we have to talk about his impact for Brazil. Like recently, when Brazil won 5-0 against South Korea, Esteval scored a brace, dribbling into the right side and just being dead. Even in a 2-0 win against Senegal, Esteval was the guy that broke the deadlock, setting the tone of the game, leading the Brazilians forward before Casemiro would double the lead. And then even when Brazil aren't playing too well, in a 1-1 draw against Tunisia, they are running up at this point. Esteval steps up for a penalty. It's all set up. That's 5 goals in 11 games for Brazil for Esteval. You look at someone like Vinny Jr., his numbers have actually disgraceful. Vinny Jr. having 8 goals in 4 games. And honestly, it's like Ancelotti just messed it up Esteval. Also, Maresca is doing the same too. These two are not acting like he's a star man, but they are also being diligent enough, but not restricting him from playing with his flair. It's the perfect blend of what a player needs and what a player wants. And I genuinely think that if he continues on this rate, he can be one of the best wingers in football, and one that can hug the touchline and be wide, also come from offense space and things like that. Especially as Chelsea have had Cole Palmer out front in most of that game this season. Esteval has been the one that stepped up, being a creative hub for Chelsea. Imagine when Cole Palmer just back into the side and Esteval and Hunter touchline on takeaways. Chelsea will be even more dangerous, especially when their strikers come back too. I really do think Esteval could be that guy, and again, he's number one that trajectory I will have to be watching for the rest of the season. So let me know what you think about Esteval. Are there any other wingers in football that we need to dive into just like this one? Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and of course this has been GgNoRaGe 101 with silent for a few minutes. Finally, the international break is no more. Club football came back with a bang, because this Saturday we just witnessed some banging games. Banging. We just watched Liverpool got to it, Manchester City got to it, and Chelsea is starting to look like they're in a title race. And also, Arsenal played their first game back at the Camp Nou.
Man, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. That's not a penalty, man.
Excited, man. Everyone is excited.
I'm
I'm so excited that it's got me eating bananas at 11 p.m.
That boy Bruno.
I'm serious about this. More my head. So first off, let's talk about that.
What the fuck, Bruno?
Have Liverpool actually finished themselves?
Bruno. You gotta be kidding me.
But this just confirms it. No longer am I going to be talking about them in a title race at this point. Because they get miracle. They changed.
You know, just shooting that dude.
The powers of
No
the above
fun.
come down and bless them with an unbeaten streak for the rest of the season. There is no chance in hell, heaven, earth, the water, the ground, the fire. There is no chance that Liverpool make it to the top. There's no. And it's weird because going into this season, saying that it's and we had already written off the Premier League. But now looking back at it, it's all and the next is out. This Klopp's plan to win the Premier League with players that he brought in and let Arsenal fail? I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe I'm gonna start a little theory. I'm gonna type that up on Reddit. Theory about Arsenal being a double agent. Something about this watching. Now in this game against Nottingham Forest, they were 3-0 at Anfield. Something that they haven't done in a while. Back-to-back games. First off in the 35th minute, it's a scrum clearance. Murillo turns into R9 Ronaldo with the finish that he displays. And honestly, looking at this goal by Murillo, what on earth is Van Dijk doing with his clearance? I don't know what's happened with Van Dijk. I have been one of his highest praises in recent times. The best centre back in the Premier League. But it's down to what's to be studied and analysed. Not by me, that's not my opinion. In the 43rd minute, Nottingham Forest at the back of the net again via Igor Jesus. But this one was actually disallowed by Ocampo, and even that decision was quite questionable. But Nottingham Forest didn't really take it so harshly, because right after half time, they come out, play a little bit of magic on that left hand side before Nico Williams cuts it back, and it's Savona who puts the ball into the back of the net. Fullback to fullback action. This is like prime Clichy and Bakary Saka. In my whole lifetime, they never did this, but there you go. Liverpool were clearly asleep on the restart and didn't listen to the advice that Arne Slott's bald head was giving them at half time, because clearly they've conceded instantly and are back on the back foot. Stressing Manda. And then to top it off, in the 78th minute, it's a direct free kick towards the Liverpool goal. Their winger gets it, cuts inside, takes a shot. Alisson parries it away, but it falls in the path of Morgan Gibbs-White, who easily just slots it up. It's now 3-0 to Nottingham Forest, and Liverpool have been stunned by Sean Dyche, a manager that has long history with beefing Liverpool. Just remember a few seasons back when Dyche and Klopp were going to go toe-to-toe in a brawl. But this time, Liverpool are no match under the managerial constructs of Arne Slot. And at this point, there are so many problems for Liverpool to address. First of all, that defense is absolutely disgraceful. The likes of Konate and Van Dijk in this game were miserable, to say the least. They need signings, but not the ones that they made in the summer. They need defensive also. But that's something that they should have addressed, and they just didn't. How they get into the likes of Semenyo. Well, what is Semenyo going to add to the squad? Well, look at his maybe a shot goal. Despite Salah being there, the star guy, I don't know what has happened since he got that contract. In the game, he created maybe a couple chances, but all round, he was poor. Most of the Liverpool players were poor. Isak started this game, and nobody's talked about him once because he was ghostly once again. Starting 4 games and losing 4 games for Liverpool since he joined. But you know what? This is not a Liverpool video, and if they lose one more, I will make an entire proper video on the main channel. They're going to get full exposure. But let's just rather understand the Nottingham Forest performance, because that was legendary. Let's not act like Sean Dyche hasn't revamped this entire Nottingham Forest team. Praise to the Dyche. Now, after Liverpool failed against Nottingham Forest, we weren't thinking that Manchester City were going to do the same against Newcastle, because their record against Newcastle was somewhat flawless, with their last loss to Newcastle coming several years ago. And in this game, similarly to Liverpool, Manchester City had multiple opportunities to put themselves up early on. The likes of Foden had multiple opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net, but failed, with one of the occasions happening where Shaw actually tackled him after he attempted to score. And from what it looked like, it could have been a penalty, and on any other day, it would have been a penalty, but it just wasn't given. The referee in this game was a bit of a disgrace, let me not lie. And there's multiple opportunities in this game, with a cutback even leading to Haaland missing a pretty good opportunity to get his 100th goal in the Premier League. But also Newcastle had opportunities too, with Walter Marder having numerous amounts of chances to slot the ball home. And despite missing these chances, I think his all-round game was ideal for a striker. And let's just quickly mention that a lot of Newcastle fans were bummed out, seeing Isak go to Liverpool and saying, how could we replace him? We cannot replace him. But they have replaced him. They've replaced him with someone that's in the same archetype and is showing that he's better this season. Maybe not in the long run, but right now, he's looking better. Then finally, in the second half, in the 63rd minute, it's the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and Harvey Barnes linking up in a bit of transitional play to break this Manchester City line, with Harvey Barnes taking a shot outside of the 18-yard box that just floats in, zipping into the bottom left corner of the goal. And honestly, let's just give a little round of applause to Harvey Barnes in this game, because this not only would be his first goal in the game, but also he had multiple opportunities and was very deadly for Newcastle, along with Bruno Guimaraes, who was causing a bunch of problems and being very physical in the midfield, as he always does. However, the referee needed to be questioned in this game, because it was all, at points I had to double check and be like, yo, Burkinio, was that a foul? And he's looking at me and he's saying, yeah, that is a foul. But the referee ain't giving no opportunities, no free kicks, no nothing. And this tone of the referee being absolutely on something this game would be linked to Manchester City's goal. Because they would score in the 68th minute, just about 5 minutes later after Newcastle had scored. It's Doku on that right hand side that does a little shift and then crosses it into the box, but it goes all the way to Ryan Cherki. Ryan Cherki then tries to shoot for himself, but the deflection goes into the path of Ruben Diaz. And Ruben Diaz, just like Murillo did against Liverpool, pulled out a lovely finish. A finish that was deflected in, going through the legs of Shaw, but also into the back of the net, but still, we take those. The score's now 1-1, but straight after this goal, Ruben Diaz's excitement gets to him. Something like Sanji from One Piece. You know, his nose starts bleeding. And because of this blood in his nose, he's forced to get off the pitch. He's now having an argument with the referee while Pep Guardiola is, managing the situation, while they're also trying to put some buds in his nose. And while this is happening, Newcastle are on the attack, trying to get their league back. And as Ruben Diaz is coming onto the pitch, Newcastle are taking a corner. He quickly gets back to his battle stations, sets up his defence, and the ball is whipped in. The ball's then whipped in. Donnarumma's flapping about in the box, and it's chaos. It gets headed out by Guardiola, but then headed back into the box, and then Guardiola's there to try and stop it again. But I think it's like Harvey Barnes who manages to shift it to the right-hand side. Murphy then lobs the ball back into the box. It's Voltemade with his long neck headering the ball towards goal and across it. Then GgNoRaGe manages to put it onto the crossbar, and then Harvey Barnes is there to put it into the goal. It's now 2-1 to Newcastle, and all of this just happened in like 10 minutes. It was crazy, a frenzy of opportunity. And then from there, we just knew that it was going to be a battle. Newcastle were going to lock up shop and not let Manchester City penetrate their goal. And the script was written and played out, because that's exactly what happened. Manchester City just looked dire after that, with Haaland not really getting any clear opportunities to score, and Pep Guardiola making, in my opinion, some silly substitutions, taking off the likes of Doku, bringing on toothless players in the likes of Oscar Bob and Savio in a situation that they just couldn't handle. They were doing the same thing over and over again. I don't think the highlights online are going to do it justice, but Savio and Oscar Bob was so boring. It was so boring. They were not taking on their man. They were not going past anyone. They were not trying anything. Savio maybe put a couple balls into the box, but Oscar Bob was loose. And Pep Guardiola subbed off the likes of Cherki and Doku, who were actually doing something. Foden had a ghostly game after missing opportunities in the first half, and Haaland, of course, he's not one of them strikers that's going to go drop deep and create the chance for himself. He needs some sort of guy that's going to provide him with something. But if there's nothing, then what can he do? Punch a defender. This is just another one of them games that makes the footballing world question Pep Guardiola and Manchester City this season, because they have been so good, but also there have been patches where they've been so bad. But Newcastle, they are honestly looking like Titan killers at this point. They go up against a lot of big teams and they provide us with big performances, but it's against the smaller sides where they do struggle a lot of the time. And now that kind of begs the question, with Liverpool losing, Manchester City losing, and Chelsea winning, are Chelsea now in this title race? Arsenal sit firmly at the top, but in second, Chelsea are warming up their seat. They're making themselves comfy in second place in the Premier League after being called, £1 billion bottle jobs last season. And in their fixture against Burnley, they were comfortable. The likes of Jamie Bino-Gittins and Pedro Neto linking up for the first goal in the game. And then it's Mark Gui that is doing something that I rarely see in football these days, actually trying to take on his man and not being a pace abuser. Because do you know that if you don't have pace, you can still take on a player in football? You just need to utilize your body in ways that, will manipulate the defender. And Mark Gui, he's not the fastest, but in this situation, if you just slow it down or watch it, it's brilliant. Body manipulation to get around the defender before teeing up an opportunity that Pedro Neto slotted away. Actually, it wasn't Pedro Neto, it was Enzo Fernandez, my bad. But again, Chelsea looks stronger and stronger week in and week out, and it's not like they're playing the biggest of teams in Burnley, but it's just another win that they should be getting and they are getting. And finally, let's just quickly touch upon that Barcelona game, because they would win 4-0 against Athletic Club, aka Bilbao, with Lewandowski getting the first goal at the newly refurbished Camp Nou. You know how crazy that is? the oldest guy in living centuries. But my favorite goal had to be Ferran Torres' goal to make it 2-0. And it's not because of Ferran Torres' finish, but it's about that assist by Lamine Yamal. At times, his Trivela honestly looks like prime Toby Jizzle. Toby Jizzle from the Sidemen. His Trivela shot, if you guys know, is on par with Lamine Yamal. And Lamine Yamal has obviously demoed his game after Toby Jizzle, because this ball is phenomenal. He just does it with ease at this point. It's just an attribute that he's collected in his arsenal of abilities, and he pulls it out just like that nonchalantly, and Ferran Torres finishes it off beautifully. Fermin Lopez then makes it 3-0, and then the 4-0 is another bit of Lamine Yamal magic with the assist, with him dusting off a couple players before threading a ball to Ferran Torres, who finished off again, getting 2 in this game, and Barcelona just looked dominant. A little bit of bounce back in a new, stadium. It's just that new home stadium bounce, and they're looking as comfortable as ever. This was my take on some of the Saturday games that I actually paid attention to, and you guys let me know if we should talk about today's games tomorrow, so the Sunday games tomorrow. And hopefully you enjoyed this. This has been Jib and Burkinio talking to you for a while. Now, I feel like everyone has already said what I was going to say at the start. Let it all work out. It was easy, all these different puns. But did anyone going into this game between Arsenal and Tottenham actually think that Arsenal were going to lose?
What?
It doesn't matter if you're an Arsenal fan, a Burnley fan, a Chelsea fan, a Getafe fan. You knew Arsenal was going to win. And today, that's exactly what happened. But that's not all, because we got some other games to talk about in this video, and this is the Sunday recap video by Jib Rules 101. Today we had a North London derby that turned into an absolute training drill.
That was easy.
Players on the opposite side were looking like cones. Then we had a Milan derby where one of the goalkeepers had a 10 out of 10 performance. He was stopping everything. Then we had Real Madrid struggling with fodder in La Liga, whilst also their ex-legend, Ronaldo, was scoring bicycle kicks. And to top it off, we also got a brilliant display by Messi, which is actually currently ongoing, but he's already scored a goal, which was a beautiful header. You know what, we're not going to talk about the game, but just talk about this finish. Plays a little 1-2, continuing his run into the box. The ball gets put onto his head, and it's in the back of the net via a Lionel Messi header. Bro, what world are we living in? Is this Messi versus Man United? No, it's Miami versus Cincinnati. So I guess let's just run through these games, starting off with that North London derby, which I'm probably going to make a separate video on the main channel about. Arsenal came into this game top of the table, unbeaten in 9 games, knowing that winning this game would get them 6 points ahead. And Thomas Frank's newly formed Spurs side turned up to the Emirates thinking they were going to play this pragmatic style and disrupt the Arsenal flow. But no.
We don't do that
You
here.
know, at one point in this first half, Arsenal had about 80% of the possession. I actually think the entirety of the first half ended with Arsenal having 80% possession. It was domination from start to finish. And in like the first 2 minutes, Eze pulled out a chip pass into the path of Rice, who volleyed it straight at the goalkeeper. And if I'm being completely honest, Rice literally just robbed Eze of a generational assist. Because how do you just magically pull that out? This is not five-a-side, because I know there's people watching this saying, you know what, that, pass by Eze, the little flick over the top, it's easy. I can do it all the time. I do it at Power League. This is the Premier League, not Power League, bro. And Rice absolutely bottles it. Strike it left or right and it goes in. But you put it straight at the keeper, and I was disappointed from the start. But that missed opportunity wasn't enough to dampen the mood. Spurs from this point are also in like a 5-4-1 formation, pretty much defending the entirety of the first half. 2 wing backs that never really overlapped in the game, and also Bentancur and João Paulinho that were holding up nothing, getting outplayed time and time again by the likes of Zubimendi and Declan Rice. And it just goes to show, because in the first half, Spurs didn't register a shot. Most of Arsenal's joy during the first half came down the right-hand side via the likes of Saka and Yuri and Timber, linking up with the likes of Eze. Declan Rice was feeling himself, Marino was getting involved, and Calafiori also had a great game on that left-hand side too. But in the 36th minute, it's the left-hand side winger, Leandro Trossard, that puts Arsenal 1-0 up. Because Trossard makes a darting run between the Spurs centre-backs, and Marino picks him out like a prime Mesut Ozil. Nobody, and I can guarantee you nobody, saw that pass coming. It was a magnificent ball, but Trossard had a lot to do, and he hits the Booker T spinner Rooney. You know, a COD 360 no-scope, spins his man, and on the turn strikes it into the bottom left of the goal via a little deflection. But we're gonna just take that. We're gonna just take those, and we make it 1-0, and we move on with the game. Eze then announces himself to Tottenham fans because they were chasing him in the summer. You know, he decides to announce himself properly, formally. Allow me to introduce myself. And it's another one of them lofted balls before Eze takes a shot that is kind of being obstructed by Arsenal players. But by the time Eze shoots, you know, they're out of the way. The ball goes into the back of the net and it's 2-0. As if the first half wasn't traumatic enough, Spurs come out into the second half looking to have some hope, but it's diminished. The fire is put out. And it's another goal by Eberici Eze. It's Timber that slides him in, and Eze is just given way too much room. He's got a couple players around him, he wriggles between them and gets the shot off, which goes in. And this sort of finish just sums up who Eze is. You know, a tight space, a bit of quick feet, and quick thinking to put the ball in the back of the net. Something that we haven't had from our attacking midfielder in a while, since that season where, you know, Erdegaard got all them goals. I think it was like 2022. And then randomly against the run of play, you know, Zubimendi probably had a shady bet. Let's be honest. He got approached by a shady figure, New Star Soccer style, and was told, you know what, Zubimendi, you need to let Richarlison score. But Richarlison didn't score any goal because Zubimendi loses it from like near the halfway line. Richarlison takes the ball off him, sees David Raya off his line, and gives him the Aaron Ramsdale treatment. And this is a beautiful finish, let me not lie. You know, Aaron Ramsdale would be proud of David Raya. But Arsenal were not going out like that. You know, they decided we need something. Because they've just lost the clean sheet and their defence has been immaculate. David Raya just made a little mistake, and Zubimendi too. So they needed something to get back at these Spurs fans. And it was at like the 76th minute where it happened. A loose ball drops inside the Spurs box, and it's Eberici Eze that capitalizes once again. A quick shift before sending Udogie into the shadow realm, and he just slots it home. Simple as that. Eberici Eze has just scored a hat-trick against a team that were chasing after him all summer long. A hat-trick also scored for his boyhood club against their rivals. It's a magical moment, and I guess it all worked out. But honestly, this game was pretty easy for Arsenal. A massive round of applause to all of this Arsenal side, but I have a bigger video about Arsenal coming out, which I'm going to tackle a bunch of different topics, so just wait for that. Because in this game, they were frightening. By like the 80th minute, they were bringing on the Avengers. You know, Calafiori comes off. Miles Lewis-Skelly comes on, who started in the quarterfinal against Real Madrid last season. They bring off Trossard, who had an amazing game. You know, his legacy at Arsenal is coming like a prime Arshavin. I think he's one of Arteta's all-time best signings for the club. The amount of impact that this guy's had in such minimal, you know, appearances. He comes off, Madueke comes on, Nwaneri's introduced. Arsenal were just bringing on players like Mosquera was brought in for Hincapié. Bro, at one point I was like, when will this stop? There's too many ballers that are coming onto the pitch.
Oh my.
And honestly, performances like this just make you think that this is going to be a walk in the park for Arsenal, and the only people that will stop Arsenal this season is Arsenal. You know, in their DNA, they might just flop themselves. You never know. But onto a Milan derby that was not as exciting as this derby, but it still had some fun moments. And if I'm being honest, this game between Milan and Inter did look pretty fair at times. But after Milan got their goal, you know, Inter, I don't know how they didn't score. Inter, of course, start off with the ball. You know, they're dominating the majority of this game. With a first half Inter domination, but Mike Maignan was having an absolute field day in goal. He was saving everything. You had DeMarco whipping it across to Marcus Thuram. He would pull out a diving header, but it's saved. Then you had Francesco Acerbi climbing from a Çalhanoğlu header who finally beats Maignan, but the ball goes off the bar. Then Thuram links up with Lautaro Martinez, who again can't get the ball past Mike Maignan. Inter at this point have about 20 shots in the first half to Milan's 7. But the scoreline is still 0-0 because Mike Maignan is playing like he is prime Lev Yashin. Manuel Neuer 2014 against Algeria, Thibaut Courtois against Liverpool Champions League final. And on the Milan side, they had some opportunities. Salamanca's with a little shot down at Sommer's left. And eventually it's Pulisic off a rebound that taps it home to make it 1-0 to AC Milan. And it's Captain America once again saving the day for Milan. He's been there time and time again for the majority of his Milan career. And he comes up clutch in this moment to tap it away, be there at the right time, in the right place. But Salamanca's, give him his props, taking shots, popping it, and he's done well. And from there, while Milan still had some chances with Leao showing some promise, it was Inter Milan pushing AC. And around the 73rd minute, it's Marcus Thuram who's put a ball into the box, but after the ball has gone into the box, he's been stepped on by a Milan defender. VAR shows that it's Pavlovic who's just trotted onto Ram after he's kicked the ball, and they've given a penalty. Now, this is, of course, a little bit weird because in the Premier League this weekend, we saw that Foden had a similar, pattern of play where he went to shoot against Newcastle and Shaw came in and tackled him after he had shot the ball. The ball had already gone out, but it was a foul, but the penalty wasn't given. In this game, it's been overturned. A penalty has been given to Inter. Çalhanoğlu has stepped up, who sometimes, or to most people's minds, is quite undefeatable in a penalty situation. This is a dead ball specialist in any sense. Everyone knows by now he loves that bottom left corner. And Mike Maignan adjusts, analyzes, and dives the right way, saving the penalty. And honestly, at that point, he won the game. There's nothing else to talk about. Because Inter, even though they applied so much pressure afterwards, there was no real substance to it. The likes of Martinez was dragged off for Boni, new signing by Inter, and they just couldn't get a clear-cut opportunity to score and actually put the ball away. Inter dropped points and AC Milan gained points, but they were not the only big side that could feel that they were disappointed coming out of this game week. Because in a game in La Liga between Elche and Real Madrid, there would be another bit of upset, with Elche stunning Real Madrid in the game. And it's a beautiful little passage of play. Elche are playing decently this season, and they are showing with this goal, slotting it in via the post, and Real Madrid is shocked. They get one back via Dean Huijsen volleying it in after, the ball comes down. But Elche say, no, we're not going outside. We actually want to win this game. And it's Alvaro Rodriguez who slots home Elche's second on the night to make it 2-1. And then in the 87th minute, there's chaos in the Elche box via Real Madrid. The ball is whipped into the box via a set piece, then headed on. It's chaos, and Dean Huijsen manages to head it down. It then goes into the path of Jude Bellingham, and while the goalkeeper goes down to save it, Vinny Jr. has just trotted on his chest. Well, not really, but Vinny Jr. has trotted near the goalkeeper, near his face, and honestly, it could have been called for a foul right there. But play continues, and the ball looks like it's rolling out of it, but Mbappe is there to cut it across goal, and Bellingham puts it in. Bellingham has just grabbed Real Madrid 1 point in the 86th minute, but look, this is quite controversial. Did they actually deserve this goal? And during the build-up to their first goal, they were calling for handball, the Elche fans. Real Madrid have just scammed themselves to a 2-2 draw, and they think they could win it. And to add insult to misery for these Elche fans, late on, it's like the 95th minute, and Mbappe's gone to take on an Elche defender, and he's dragged him by the shirt and got a red card. So Elche were at a high point of nearly getting 3 points, then drew the game and also got their man sent off. It's a disgrace. This sort of game is just a disgrace. I don't know what the referee's playing at. Real Madrid have got done out with a point. They should have lost this game, and now they're looking very shaky in La Liga. Teams around them should be looking to capitalize. Barcelona, you know what to do. And you know what? Finally, we're going to just quickly highlight Ronaldo, because a 40-year-old Ronaldo today scored a bicycle kick in the Saudi Pro League. In a game between Al Nassr and Al Khalij, Ronaldo's Al Nassr would win 4-1, with the likes of João Felix having a man-of-the-match performance, and he has found his level. João Felix and Wesley would score for Al Nassr, but Al Khalij weren't going out without a fight. And it's a shot from Housawi from distance that goes in to make it 2-1. But then Sadio Mane gets the goal, and finally it's Cristiano Ronaldo late on in the game that pulls out a random bicycle kick. With a lofty cross being swung in from that right-hand side in the 95th minute of the game, Ronaldo is given way too much space and time. He He's actually got a man on him, but he decides to go for the bicycle, and my oh my, is it legendary. Adjusted his feet, leaping higher than everyone, doing stuff that a 40-year-old shouldn't be contemplating to do. I'll probably get a back sprain if I'm 40 and trying to do this. But yeah, today's games was something else. I don't know what to tell you. You know, there were great games, bad games. You tell me, what did you think of today's games? And I'll see you on the main channel in a bigger and better video about Arsenal. Now this morning I've just been sat here eating my breakfast, but I just couldn't shake the thought of them games that we witnessed last night. You know, I actually had to talk about it, so we're going to talk about them games because we just saw Barcelona finally enter flow state. We also saw an absolute thriller between Manchester City and Fulham. Tottenham and Newcastle also battled it out in a 2-2 draw. But that's not what triggered me to make this video. It was Barcelona, because I sat there and watched Barcelona take on Atletico Madrid and dismantle them. And this wasn't just a regular La Liga game for Barcelona. They came into this game against Atletico Madrid, top of the table, having to win to maintain that position. Because even though Real Madrid have been poor this season, they're right behind them. And also, they were coming up against an Atletico side that had won 6 on the bounce. A team that had previously won against Real Madrid this season. And with the Camp Nou being open, honestly, watching this game felt like an old-school Barcelona-Atletico Madrid game where both of these teams are in the title race. And on top of that, we finally got to see the brilliance of the likes of Pedri and Rafinha start from the jump and be injected into this Barcelona side. Because we all know by now, without the likes of Pedri and Rafinha, Barcelona just looked lost. Let me just give the ball to Lamine Yamal. Let this kid figure out what to do. And during this game, they would end up winning 3-1, but it wouldn't go without some questions being asked about that Barcelona defense early in the game by that breaks the line, gets them behind, takes the ball over the goalkeeper. And instantly, the Barcelona defense, they're looking towards the lines and they're saying, bro, he's offside. But no, after a check, this goal is a goal. Bayern breaks the lines at the perfect time, and his goal actually stands. Again, emphasizing this fact of Barcelona and their fragile defense. Like, they can't get this offside trap right. Time and time again, they've just been getting exposed. But in this game, it was different because they had their key men. Just remember, they were making similar mistakes last season in the league and in the Champions League, where the defense was completely closed via the offside trap. But football fans at the time just glazed over this massive problem because Barcelona's attack was so fluid and direct. Meaning that even if they conceded like 3 goals against Benfica, they would score more goals than Benfica and win the game. And in this game, it felt like Barcelona from last year had been revitalized. Because it took until like the 25th minute for Pedri to put a ball in behind to Rafinha. Rafinha takes a touch, goes past the keeper, and it's 1-1. And again, without the likes of Pedri and Rafinha on the pitch, you wouldn't have the option of these players finally getting the first goal. And it's not like the likes of Lamine Yamal wasn't playing good from the start. He was playing brilliant. But sometimes you just need another option that's not being occupied by the defense. And Rafinha in this case, and in this first goal for Barcelona in the game, was that man. Then Barcelona via Dani Olmo received a penalty. Unfortunately, Lewandowski, I don't know what happened. Maybe a lapse in judgment, local style, but he was just not being all the sky a pigeon in Spain. This moment also brings me to the topic of Lewandowski. I'm hearing rumors that he's going to get contract with the at the end of the season. Barcelona, they're going to be left with the likes of Ferran Torres. And despite Ferran Torres actually playing well when he came into the game, scoring a goal, I don't think he should be looking at the Barcelona. But it also begs the question, Barcelona will be looking to fill the proof of Lewandowski that came at the right age of 37. He can really fill those shoes and not be worth something that Barcelona can't really maintain. They're not going to be able to spend the 7 million on. But anyway, when that second half came, it's like Hansi Flick and Barcelona players just entered the flow state, turning this game honestly into a training drill. Over 560 passes complete, and for the goal that Dani Olmo scored to make it 2-1, Barcelona went in flow state because not even the highlights will do it justice. But there was like 30 passes that they played it out the back. They broke the lines. Atletico Madrid, they're trying to press them. They make their way out. They shift the ball forwards. It goes to the right-hand side. It goes to the left-hand side. And eventually, it's Lewandowski putting a little flick pass into Olmo. Olmo finishes off, dislocates his shoulder blade in the process. And Barcelona run up. Like, you literally see Atletico Madrid chasing shadows for about 30 seconds before this just takes place. And then later on in the game, when the reinforcements were on the pitch, like so Rashford, Ferran Torres, they even Rashford playing a ball, I think, to Balde, who crosses it, and it's Ferran Torres with a little flick up and volleys it in. But for me, my favourite player in this game was Rafinha. He's been players. The combination of having him, Pedri, and Lamine Yamal on the pitch is devastating for opposing teams. With his versatility, work rate just being above everyone else on that Barcelona team. Lamine Yamal also had a brilliant game. He occupies his man one-on-one, for the entire 90 minutes, for the entire time that he's on the pitch. With him dropping in deep, whipping in crosses into the box that, could have ended up in a goal. And also, we just got to praise this Pedri, cameo that we saw, even though, he played for a lot of the game and eventually came off. It looked like an injury, but he just apparently was tired. In this game, he barely lost the ball. He created 3 great chances. He was, just perfect with every single pass that he made. And it's like every single pass is the perfect weight. That led to Barcelona's first goal in the game. It was a perfectly weighted pass into the path of Rafinha. It's not an easy ball to pull off. Yeah, it went straight into his feet. It was a big whip. Rafinha was able to just continue his movement, go past the keeper and score. And that's why I asked the question, with the likes of Pedri and Rafinha back thriving in this side, even without the likes of Gavi and Frankie de Jong, what could Barcelona do? Could they enter flow state in the second half of the season and really start to push the gap between them and Real Madrid in La Liga, but also come out on top in the Champions League where it's needed? Because they've been upset a couple of times. They've faced losses against like PSG and Chelsea. They're trying to one of their players, they really need to come back strong. But again, can their attack outweigh their defense like it did in the season, leading them into the later stages of every competition? We'll just have to find out. And honestly, it was a great game for Barcelona fans to really look ahead into this season and say, you know what, the positives are there. Hansi Flick is the guy still, and we're just missing key pieces, relying upon an 18-year-old to drag us out of the mud. Also in yesterday's games, we would see a brilliant battle between the likes of Newcastle and Tottenham, which was honestly at a stalemate in the first half before Bruno GgNoRaGe comes on in that second half. And for a bit of amazing play, I think it's like Anthony Gordon just burst past this man on the left-hand side before crossing it into the box. Baltimore just lays it off to Bruno GgNoRaGe and he whips it into the far right corner of the goal. It's a brilliant move, and honestly, we've got to give props to the directness of the likes of Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes in the game, because these two are some of the most direct and forward-thinking wingers in the league. They just see their man and they take it. Then Tottenham centre-back Romero equalises it with a header, and he's coming like a striker. I don't know why he was even in this position to score the goal. But in the 86th minute, Newcastle gets a penalty via a bit of a dodgy decision. Bentancur and Dan Burn are fighting in the box when a ball's going into the box. And Burns is brought down, and eventually they're given a penalty. Anthony Gordon slots it away perfectly, and Newcastle fans are thinking, game done. But in the last move of the game, in at the 95th minute, a cross is put into the box via a corner. There's a bit of buckle in the box. The ball eventually bounces out. Romero looks at it and says, I'm going to hit a bicycle kick. That's the most fluky bicycle kick I've ever seen. It went off his shin, and then everyone just stood still. Ramsdale looks at the ball as it goes into the back of the net. Romero has just scored the worst bicycle kick I've ever seen in my life, and still tied up the game, making it 2-2. And Newcastle have just been taken away the 3 points that they could achieve. Because if we're being honest, they had like 18 shots in the game. They were dominating throughout. They were looking lethal. but they just didn't put away a lot of the chances that they created. But another game that took the chances that they created was the one between Manchester City and Fulham. And early on in this game, it was looking like Manchester City were just going to dust off Fulham with ease. Going up 3-0 before half-time, it was the likes of Haaland scoring the first on the night. Haaland would score after Doku would put the ball across the face of the goal. You know, it goes through defenders' legs, and Haaland just slaps it into the goal. Then for the second goal on the night, Haaland dips into his creative bag on the turn, puts a through ball into the path of Reinders. Reinders dinks it over the keeper and hits the celebration. Then to top it off, after another attack by Manchester City, the ball rolls out to Foden at the edge of the box, and he just whips it into the top left corner. It's 3-0 now, and we're all thinking, there's no way that Fulham can get back into this game. But I think it was before half-time where Emil Smith-Rowe randomly scored, a 10 out of 10 header against the run and play. He turned his head mid-air, diving into the ball, and it goes into the back of the net. And Fulham fans, they're thinking, okay, cool, we can do something. And then again, it's an ex-Arsenal man that drags Fulham back into this game with Iwobi now scoring. And suddenly Manchester City are put on the back foot because whenever Fulham attack, when the ball drops, there's always an opportunity. And Chukwueze, former AC Milan player, capitalizes twice, scoring one goal after the ball fell to him, and then his second goal, again, cross goes in, Donnarumma flaps at it, ball rolls out, Chukwueze is there, and he puts it into the back of the net. It's now 5-4 to Manchester City, and Fulham are one behind. And Fulham actually could have made it 5-5, but Manchester City and Guardiola shut up the shop. Chaotic football that again makes people just ask questions about this Manchester City side. They don't really have the skill that they'd usually have at the back. Their goalkeeper, Donnarumma, I love Donnarumma, but every time a ball goes into the box, he flaps at it, and it just doesn't make sense. He's trying to punch the ball every time, catch it, or hit it at someone. But yeah, you guys tell me, what was your favourite moment from the games yesterday? And I'll try and talk about today's games. We got Arsenal, Brentford, we got Real Madrid, playing today as well. So maybe I'll talk about them, and hopefully you'll get that too. But yeah, this has been Gibbral's 101. Just wanted to talk about Barcelona.
Chelsea Chase
address the other games I was playing.
Did I see that? 173 million. Wow.
Now, for most of my life growing up watching football, the debate was simple. La Liga was better than the Premier League, and that was just a fact. I was seeing the likes of Messi score 4 goals against my favourite team, Arsenal, in the Champions League year after year. Even back then, the Premier League had the money, the vibes, the TV license. I could watch these games and these teams. But La Liga, they had all the best players. The Messis, Ronaldos, Neymars, Bales, Benzemas, Xavi, Iniesta, Modric, Cruz. Bro, they had the Galacticos of the world. I'm telling you, Spanish teams had a chokehold on football, and especially English clubs. There was no debate at one point. La Liga was ultimately just better than the Premier League and was dominating them in every category. But this season in particular, it seems like something has switched. Because even before the game between Barcelona and Chelsea that we witnessed in the Champions League last week, English teams had won 10 of the last 11 games that they'd faced against Spanish sides, with the only recent exception being Barcelona's 2-1 win against Newcastle at St James's Park, where we saw Marcus Rashford drop an absolute masterclass. But then the other day, Chelsea come along and absolutely dominate Barcelona 3-0 at home. So right now in football, is the Premier League versus La Liga debate kind of over? But first, we just need to remember where we came from, because La Liga for the past 15 years was moving like a final boss, something like Final Fantasy. You go through the game, and eventually, you gotta face this brother at the end, or this creature, and you're just trying for years to try and beat this creature. It's not working, and eventually, years go by, and you crack the code. And there was a great breakdown that Opta did that I'll throw up on screen, entailing that Spanish teams went on a run of 27 games in major finals against non-Spanish opposition where they won, out of 28. That stat dates back all the way to 2002, meaning every final since then that a Spanish team has been involved in, they've only lost once. With the run including Barcelona winning against Arsenal back in 2006, Manchester United in the 2010s. With the streak only ending last year when Chelsea won 4-1 against Real Betis in the Conference League final, becoming the first non-Spanish side to beat a Spanish side in a final since Bayern against Valencia back in 2001. But fast forward to the 2025/26 season, and this has completely flipped. And I know that we're not in the knockout rounds of the Champions League yet, but just in these preliminary stages, you know, the group stage or the table stage, in a sense, with English teams winning 8 out of the 9 games that they've come up against a Spanish opponent. This season, we've seen the likes of Arsenal hand out a 2-0 to Athletic Bilbao. You know, even though it was looking shaky in the game, Martinelli comes on, makes it 1-0, and then eventually Trossard gets the second. Elsewhere in North London, Tottenham would beat Villarreal 1-0 this year too. Honestly, this being the closest of the games because Tottenham's goal wasn't really even there. And then throughout the game, star man of Villarreal, Nicolas Pepe, would try and drive at the Tottenham defence, went toe-to-toe with Atletico Madrid and came out 3-2 winners, going 2-0 up 10 minutes into the game. But then it's an old foe that comes in and traumatises Liverpool fans, Marcos Llorente, with him scoring twice in the game, once in the 45th and then again in the 81st. But eventually Liverpool would get the win via Virgil van Dijk later on. Man City would also be in on the action, handing a 2-0 loss to Villarreal, with Haaland scoring within 20 minutes and Bernardo Silva adding to the tally. City looking comfortable, controlled and just on cruise control during this game. And then a big game between Arsenal and Atletico Madrid would send shockwaves around the football as well. Something like Shanks standing up at Mourinho, you know, Arsenal just dropped a 4-0 on Atletico Madrid. And this was a dominant display by Arsenal. You know, we thought they were going to go haram for haram, but no. It was a dominant performance, continuing their form against these Spanish clubs, you know, last Champions League when they won against Real Madrid, home and away. Then the only La Liga side to get a double in the English side would be Barcelona, winning 2-1 against Newcastle. They would go to St James's Park and ultimately dominate the likes of Pedri, Kunde, all having outstanding performances, but it was Rashford who really made his presence known. But then the night that almost made it feel symbolic. You know, you thought I wasn't going to talk about this game. You guys really thought I forgot. You know, I didn't make a video on the main channel. I didn't make a video on this channel, but eventually I was going to speak about it. Because on the 25th of November 2025, Chelsea absolutely dominated Barcelona at Stamford Bridge. Still missing their star man Cole Palmer, they just took it to Barcelona and said, you know what? You ain't running it here. With the likes of Cucurella locking up Lamine Yamal throughout the game, Esteban showing Barcelona who he is, Caicedo being a machine in the middle. You know, this guy will do anything to get the ball. He will even bite your ankle. Early on in the game, Barcelona would only ruin it for themselves. Kunde actually scoring an own goal. And then things would get even worse, with Ronaldo Araujo getting a red card via a silly tackle. But then Chelsea's star man on the right wing, a guy that I made an entire video about, Esteban, would show up and show Barcelona what they missed out on, because he was actually linked to Barcelona before moving to Chelsea, becoming the third teenager in history to score a goal on his first 3 appearances in the Champions League, with the only other 2 players to do this being Haaland and Itachi. Yeah, that isn't the greatest of company, is it? It is the greatest of company. And then later on, Liam Delap would add to the misery of Barcelona fans. For Barcelona this game, Chelsea absolutely dominated. It was 15 shots to 5. They were just running throughout. And let's not get into the fact that Chelsea also had like 3 goals disallowed in the game. Like, it was crazy. They could have won this 7-0. It could have been a rout. Pressing high and getting at these Barcelona players, Chelsea disrupted Hansi Flick. So that's kind of the story right now in football. You know, La Liga sides are getting destroyed by Premier League teams. And was it just fate that Chelsea beat the curse? You know, did they break the curse against Real Betis in the final of the Conference League and open up the doors for English sides to start dominating again? Because it's not just been this season. You know, last season we saw Arsenal collapse Real Madrid and their Galacticos. And I'm not trying to make this seem like some sort of Premier League propaganda piece, but I'm just pointing out the obvious. Football, at the end of the day, is just a cycle. Going on and on. Being dominated for the last 20 years. Maybe it's time that Premier League players and Premier League teams step up again. And even though the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid are still, you know, existing and are battling in their own sort of race in La Liga, they have actually been underwhelming this season so far. And nobody right now is predicting either of these sides to win the Champions League. With the Champions League ultimately being the decider, you know, this is the best team in Europe. So is the La Liga versus Premier League debate officially over, or is it just starting again? will I have to eat my words by the end of the season with the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid if they go through into the knockout stages of the Champions League? They come up against the English side and they dominate them. Come back to this video and tell. But yeah, I just wanted to point something out that I noticed when Chelsea beat Barcelona, because it's kind of been a pattern. The Premier League sides, they're really thriving. So yeah, guys, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next video. This has been Jim and Bofinio, and yeah. There is a 21-year-old footballer playing in the Serie A who is obviously just farming entirely. Right now, he's doing it all. The craziest thing is, he doesn't play for the likes of Inter Milan. No, this guy plays for Roma. Some of you don't even know who Roma is. Forget about Roma. And this guy's name is Nico Paz. After 13 league games this season, Nico Paz has 5 goals and 5 assists, contributing to 10 goals in 13 games. He's put himself up there with the likes of Lautaro Martinez in the scoring charts this season, being joint second behind the likes of Martinez and Orsolini, but he's first for assists and goal contributions himself. And with the only other player in the top 5 leagues being Michael Olise to achieve this feat of having 5 for 5, we need to talk about Nico Paz. Who is this guy? This guy is honestly one of my favorite number 10s in football right now. You just watch one game and you will fall in love with the play style. Because right now in football, he has it all. Everything that we desire in a classic number 10 that honestly is a position that is on the decline and has been for many years. The ability to drop it deep and receive the ball, but also receive it and turn. He's someone that can break a press by himself by turning on the ball and driving at the opposition. Something that a lot of your favourite number 10s in football can't do. He's confident with the ball and still keen on the eye. And with him only being born in 2004, this guy has the entirety of his career left to thrive in this position. Will it be at home? Because if you didn't know this already, Nico Paz isn't a homegrown player. You know, he didn't come from the ranks of Como. What the hell was a Como? He went from the likes of San Juan to Tenerife and eventually found himself in the Real Madrid ranks. For Real Madrid Castilla, he made 49 appearances and scored 11 goals, whilst also getting a few first team minutes here and there, with a goal that a lot of you guys might have remembered seeing when he scored a long-range banger against Napoli. But still, at this time in his career, you know, he's stuck behind the likes of Bellingham, Arda Güler, you know, Brahim Diaz, Rodrigo. You know, he's a winger, but he's also a 10. He can play in these sections of the pitch. Then in summer of 2024, Como signed his permanent deal, leaving him from Madrid for around €6 million, a bargain to say the least. But Real Madrid are smart, you know, they add in a buyback clause and a 50% sell-on rate, meaning that if Nico Paz starts to play well, which he is, they can just say, yeah, come back to the club, bro. And in his first season with Como, honestly, it was a breakout campaign, getting 6 goals and 8 assists in 35 league appearances, and again, he was showing the promise that we're all seeing this season. Marauding forward in games, you know, leading the attack creatively, helping this newly promoted Como side finish in the mid-table, you know, under the managerial constructs of Cesc Fabregas. He would be in the Serie A team of the season and also be the best player under 23. So this season so far hasn't really been a surprise to a lot who are aware of him last season. This is just a follow-up of his breakout year. He's now thriving and becoming a star. And he's thriving for a team that newly got invested in back in 2019, with Como, for a lot of people, having the richest owners in Italy. They didn't want survival, they wanted to become a stable. With stadium upgrades to Lake Como, which is where the team is based, they have turned this side into some sort of luxury. And Nico Paz is invested in team. Now Nico Paz is used as a free roaming 10 in a 4-2-3-1. He's pretty much the sole connection between built breaking the line by passing, also by driving forwards. He can the pitch and just pull the ball slip wide, and also he can do it himself. With a lot of people saying that his play style is similar to Mike's Pep. And let me just make this clear, you know, Paz isn't just about his stats, his physical capability. He is one of the new generation of pioneers in the 10, putting himself on there. Jeremy. Foden.
Erling's out. Haaland. Front for the bread, ready for the bread. She online with the breed. Sean need to go for the peps. You bullshit, you wanna fight? Oh, I get on my phone with where's that? You know that he's also observing, sticking up.
Same conversations as the likes of Turkey and a Cole. Yeah, he's doing it for a team that are insignificant in comparison to the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea. And I think a perfect example of a performance that just illustrates Nico Paz in a nutshell is that game against Lazio. Early on, getting an assist in the game, but also scoring a direct free kick, demonstrating his brilliant technical ability, but also his vision on the ball. Then he goes and puts an amazing performance. It's up against Juventus.
Done, Randall. You are the future of your house. Yours is already white, one great house in the world. Don't let it happen again, Bemini.
I will not.
Ref's boldness had refused to die.
If that becomes a mission, then we take it.
Chris. It's a heading to this map.
That's a heading.
With the clash between these sides bringing up
Spaz on this bitch, I'm gonna go crazy, nigga, check this out. Y'all, hey, I'm the type of nigga, always got some more. Hey, tighten up, gentlemen, spaz on this bitch, I'm gonna go crazy, nigga, check this out. Y'all, hey.
Hot take. Smart men play Madden. Okay? 2K don't really take skill. Or like mental skill.